Which states are the best or the worst at recycling? So among the very best, we have the state of Maine. I actually didn't expect that one. But we also have Vermont, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, even New York doing a pretty good job as well. Oregon is doing the best among the Pacific states. I actually thought California would be a little bit higher than that. But as for the worst, we have Mississippi, and even below that, we have Alaska. I guess I have never heard about recycling in Alaska. I'm assuming they're probably more focused on surviving polar bear attacks. My birth state of Alabama is not doing a very good job either, though. I'm kind of just glad we got third to last. We gotta take those dubs when we can get them. Let's not ignore how good Minnesota and then Iowa is also doing at this. Even Nebraska at 46% is doing pretty good compared to their neighbors. Of course, as recycling goes, you can recycle different things. There's cardboard and box boards, there's rigid plastics, there's PET bottles, steel cans, and glass jars. Maine is actually taking a lot of the categories over here, but Michigan is very good at aluminum can recycling, and Pennsylvania very good at steel can recycling. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of things, we have Alaska and Mississippi tied for the worst with cardboard and box boards, and Alaska's taking number one. They're not even at 5%. Here's Hawaii randomly only at 4%. Oh, and then West Virginia taking these bottom two. 1% is really low. Like, at least Alaska got to 3% with aluminum cans. But I'm sure recycling this stuff is not super easy. There needs to be a whole infrastructure in place to even begin to do it. Connecticut, Vermont, and Maine just killing it overall in all the categories, though. The highest ocean plastic waste polluters. And let's just go ahead and start off with the big one. Number one, the Philippines. Over 350,000 metric tons. We then have India, which is pretty big, Malaysia, Vietnam, Bangladesh. You would think Indonesia would be a little bit higher just because of their population, and they're just a bunch of islands. I guess this place is doing a pretty good job of keeping that stuff in landfills, though. We also have Brazil, Thailand, and China, and then there's the rest of the world. I think this is all the other countries combined, which would make sense since a lot of countries are landlocked. I mean, I don't even know how they could pollute the oceans. Then again, who knows? Maybe they can find a way. The chart literally cites that this is particularly prevalent in tropical archipelago regions, which would obviously increase the chances of plastics ending up in the oceans. That's why I thought Indonesia would be higher. India and China are the two most populated countries on Earth, so I figured they would be somewhere on the list. They also just have a lot of coastline in their territory. Interesting that most of the offenders of this are really coming from this part of the world, though. Again, with countries with a lot of population and in a tropical environment. Keep in mind those stories like this where the Philippines actually put Canada's waste back on a ship to return it to their country. Canada usually uses the Philippines to recycle plastics, which could be a really big reason why the Philippines are so high in this chart. I'm sure other countries are involved too. The revenue of fast food chains in America. So US fast food restaurants ranked by sales, McDonald's is number one, and it goes Starbucks, Subway, Burger King, Taco Bell, Wendy's, and so on. There's actually a pretty huge breakdown. It goes even lower than that. Wow, KFC is surprisingly low. This chain is just such an internationally recognized restaurant. It goes to show, I don't even know if the US really likes it all that much, though. There's more than 25,000 of them in 145 countries. Here's the breakdown in type of fast food chains. So right here in the middle, in the tomato, we have pizza places. The top are all burger joints. The cheese is chicken. Wow, we really like our chicken. I like the lettuce, which is supposed to represent Tex-Mex or Asian food. A random combination, but okay. And here's the number of franchises each chain actually has. So McDonald's is at 14,000, but Starbucks is looking like they're catching up. Oh, nobody has Subway beat, though, with 25,000. I actually knew that. I totally forgot about that info, though. There's 12,000 Dunkin' Donuts. Only 821 Whataburgers, yet they're pulling in all this revenue. Sorry, I know it's what a burger, but I was always taught to say Whataburger. I've honestly never even heard of this. The average American spends $1,200 on fast food annually, and America as a whole spends $15 billion on fast food. Out of the adults, 23% eat 3 or more fast food meals per week. Yeah, I'm a part of that. I'm a part of this quarter, I'm sorry to say. I don't like to cook. Probably doesn't help us too much with our waste pollution too. Percentage of population saying most people can be trusted. Denmark is at the highest with 74% of their people saying yes, most people can be trusted. And overall, as a whole, the Nordics are just really high up, though Sweden is a little bit lower. Now, Albania is actually lowest on the map with only 2% of their people saying most people can be trusted. The Balkans as a whole is just really low, but considering their history, all you do is do a little bit of research into that, and you'll know exactly why that is. I'm curious why France is so low compared to their neighbors like Spain, Germany, Switzerland, Netherlands. I mean, even the UK is at 43%, but France is only at 26%? But what's an even bigger mystery than that is why the city-state of Andorra is actually even lower than that. What exactly are you guys not trusting? Belarus seems to be a kind of a strange outlier in this region of Europe. 42% is a lot higher than a lot of their neighbors. I mean, Russia's at less than a quarter. And then finally, Portugal. I don't know what is going on in Portugal. What would be most interesting is to see how this map changes every decade. And then you could do like a time lapse of the numbers over time. Here is military spending as of 1995. So of course the US is going to start number one. They're pretty high up there. It's 1998 and they're at almost 300 million. But look at the top 5 as a whole. We have Germany, France, Japan, and then the UK. Remember that the Cold War just ended around this time, so a lot of things were in flux. You can actually see Russia drop out of the top 10 completely by the year 2000. Japan actually had the second highest military budget in the same year too. I guess it's important to keep in mind Japan's economy was just rolling overall during this time. So we have 20 years. Let's see how much everything changes. Japan's going to drop from second back to third. South Korea is spending a lot, and I don't see North Korea on here. Russia's actually back in the top 10. So there's going to be 3 nations to watch: China, India, Russia. Maybe some more in there. Even by the year 2008, the UK still has the second highest military budget, but China has passed them up. It's 2010. Now this is going to tick up, and it's actually going to roar right here in the teen years, the 2013 times the teen years. I don't even know how we're supposed to call that decade. So out of nowhere, Russia is back in third by 2014. Also, Saudi Arabia has popped in. UK and France is down. I think India is going to definitely jump back in there with the threat of China. Now we have Australia joining the pack. Brazil also bouncing on in there. And now we have the numbers around today. China is approaching half of what the US is spending. But as you can see, this is why the statistic that everyone loves to mention, you'd have to combine all the top 10 military budgets in order to even get close to the US military budget. Which is that the UK is outspending Russia right now. I don't know how much that's changed though. Look at this, scaled by GDP though. Saudi Arabia is actually number 1. South Korea is also in 4th. Russia's still far away from their old USSR military spending budget, but China looks like they're about to pass them up, at least in terms of percentages and things. Still, the US is going to take a very long time, I think, to catch up to. Here is the furthest German advance in the USSR, but overlaid onto modern Russian borders. So this peak actually occurred on October 1st, 1942, and as we know, it was all going to go downhill from there. This is such an interesting map because I've never seen it overlaid with modern Russian borders. So back in the day, obviously the USSR had Ukraine and Belarus, so when you put it like this, it's interesting how they didn't get that far into modern Russian borders. Although they look absolutely massive when looking at a map like this. I know they got very close to the Caspian Sea. The Stalingrad battle was huge. They also got close to Moscow, and then there was a big battle for Leningrad. Now, they didn't necessarily need to get that far into modern Russian borders to have like the entire nation collapse. Considering Soviet Union population density, this is where most of their population lived anyways. But still, I just always imagined they actually got way further than this. Although we do have to keep in mind the No-No Germans at one point did get less than 20 miles away from the Kremlin in central Moscow. This was back in 1941 though, so the territory was a little bit different. They hadn't gotten close to Stalingrad at this point. Obviously during World War II, the front lines in the Eastern Front were constantly changing, but I guess this part could have been a little bit more red if it was a couple months earlier. So yeah, they got a little deeper into Russia than just this picture. In red, the territory compromising the initial purchase offer of Mexico back in 1853. There's a lot to say about this map, but the first thing that comes to mind is, wow, do we love straight lines. Can we just stop? Like, come on. So in a different universe, this very likely could have been all the territory we took from Mexico. It could have been literally even more than just Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, all the way to California, Oregon. I know we also wanted the Yucatan Peninsula for a second there too. Now this was actually just 5 years after the US-Mexican War, which there was a movement during that time to take literally all of Mexico. We would end up only purchasing these parts of Arizona and New Mexico though in 1854, but there was a possibility they would give up a lot more for way more money. What an interesting universe this could have been. United California too. Also keep in mind that was 10 years before the US Civil War, so who knows how that could have changed things too. Or maybe it wouldn't have changed anything at all, I don't know. Countries with the most military conflicts according to Wikipedia. So unsurprisingly, in the center of the graph, we have Britain and France. Of course, Spain throughout history was a big player as well. Holy Roman Empire wasn't around forever, but they definitely got themselves into a lot of battles. We have Scotland really just going to war with Britain because, I mean, that's obvious. I mean, you know, who else are they really going to fight? Although they did have a problem with those Vikings, I will say that. We have Japan mostly just fighting China and Russia. I did not expect you guys to show up. Of course, Portugal fought Spain, but they also fought France and Turkey at times. This according to this one little line right here. The Papal States were fighting people? I guess, yeah, they were. Sweden had a nice empire for a little bit there, so yeah, they were gonna have a lot of red lines all over the place. I like how one of Greece's lines is just to Russia. It looks like almost literally everyone has fought Russia at some point, and this is according to Wikipedia articles. I'm sure there's a lot more to break down from just that. This is coming from specifically list of wars too. I want to say it probably gets way more complicated than just this though. Then again, this graph would probably be completely unrecognizable if they included literally every single fight. Just be like a giant red circle. The legal drinking age around the world. Now we all here in the US know the drinking age starts at 21, but throughout most of the world, it's usually set at 18, which when I was 18, that made a whole lot of sense to me. If I'm an adult, like, you know, you know. Canada's a little mixed. I'm assuming that's because some of their provinces are at 18, others are at 19. Most of the territory is actually set to 19, except for Alberta and Quebec. And then Manitoba has some differences between their cannabis laws. Let's talk about the elephant in the room here, though. What the hell is going on in India? They literally have some regions at 18 versus other regions where it's just completely illegal. And these regions in the top here have it actually set to 25 years old. Interesting that this province next to Bangladesh actually recently banned alcohol back in 2019. That's not even that long ago. Well, this one was 2016, pretty recent too. A lot of the Islamic world have booze completely banned as well. But then of course there's parts of Africa which have no limit to the drinking age. You can come out of the womb and have a beer. Okay, I'm pretty sure it doesn't work exactly like that. I think you still need to be able to at least purchase it, you know. What about the laws in Antarctica for alcohol consumption by penguins? Finally, there's places like Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, and Denmark which have their drinking limit at 16. That must be where all the memes come from. That reminds me of how I always bring up France used to give their school children sips of wine during lunch in the 1950s, and they were encouraged to do so. What a time to be alive. And big thanks to my patrons. Drew, I forgot to kidnap you. Next date is March 19th, 2023.
The Polish, Lithuanian,
Quinn,
Commonwealth,
Taylor,
Portugal
John,
is
Denver,
not Balkans.
good old Ryan,
Drew 44,
Iowa,
aka
Barbados
Drew, if you don't come to Krakow, Poland, I will find you.
Grandpa,
$20 is a lot.
aPhatNarwhal.
Why am I doing
Taylor
this?
Drew
And
does
Drew's
everything
goth
for $20.
girlfriend, Draven's annoying
Luxembourg's
friend,
Lover,
Robert
RyeThePie,
Anime,
the
Drake,
Mexican
Twickenhamster,